Welcome to Revolution Against Evolution. I'm your host, Doug Sharp.
I'm your co-host, Rich Gear, here with you, and we just recently went on a nice little couple of day R&R, Doug, and explored the wonders of Michigan. That's what our show's going to be about tonight. You want to talk a little bit about,
That's right,
really our home state. This is where we record the show at, and it's Michigan is a beautiful state. It's had some economic hard times, but I'm telling you, the beauty has never left it. It's still one of the most beautiful states in the world. My brother, I remember him living in Colorado, which is equally a beautiful state for different reasons, but he missed the trees.
Right, yeah.
And that's one thing. We were up there, Doug, and I'm telling you what, we were up there, north of Gaylord, Huff State Park, is that how you pronounce it?
Huff State Park,
Huff
and
State
that's
Park.
near Rogers City.
Near Rogers City.
And this is on the Sunrise side of Michigan, which is
the eastern side,
on Lake Huron,
Yeah.
and we had a good time, and we rented a place called the Sears and Roebuck Lodge.
I know. I didn't realize that till I went, what is this from? Yeah.
And what it is that this particular house was the park manager's residence. And the state parks have done a thing where they realized, it's sort of like the churches realize with parsonages. If you have a house that you buy for the church, then the people who live in it don't really aren't able to build up any equity in their home.
No.
And so they decided that they were going to instead rent out the park manager's residences and make them available for people to rent. And not many people really know that the state parks are doing this.
I didn't know that myself until you. In fact, I don't think I knew it even after this thing. I knew that you had arranged for it, but
Well, it's like last year we went up to the one at Fayette State Park, and you didn't go with us on that.
no, I didn't.
But that one was just such a marvelous time as well, and it was sort of like the same time. We did a fall color tour last year as well.
Well, truth be known, I've been up to Fayette many times
Oh,
because
yeah.
that's part of my job description. It's one of the museums I help service, and I have a lot of fun with that.
But based upon what we saw this weekend, it might as well have been part of your museum job, because we saw a lot of Michigan history as well as
we did.
as well as just enjoying the great outdoors and the color tour, which was
Well, the fall colors were kicking in. It's interesting, Doug, because we first were going up, we saw some color, but on the way back, there was a lot. It seemed like in 2 days, it really, there were a lot of greens and reds, or I'm not greens, but you got some greens, but the reds and yellows, the goldens and oranges. It was quite spectacular, I must admit.
It was really glorious in my mind.
We had a beautiful weekend. It was, for the most part, except Sunday, it was kind of got a little bit gray. But it was sunny, and those orange leaves just pop against the blue sky. They're complementary colors, and they pop when that really comes out like that. But Doug, what was one of your favorite things? I mean, you kind of arranged some of the things to do, and I was quite impressed. You came up with a good itinerary, really.
I thought, I really was sort of playing it by ear. I knew about Old Mill Creek. And we called it Oatmeal Creek.
Oatmeal Creek. That was your wife said that. That was a hoot. I love that.
Cracked up, but it's someplace I hadn't probably been to about 20 years.
Okay.
I didn't know that this place existed, and it's a reconstruction of the very first sawmill in Michigan.
Yeah, who's the guy that owned it?
His name was Campbell.
Campbell, that's right.
John Campbell, I think his name was, and he had decided to build a sawmill because sawing the boards was such a laborious task.
That's a pit saw. This is a saw pit.
Is that pine there?
That's all pine. Yeah.
So that's what they did with my hand, you have to cut it.
Wow. Yeah. What they would normally do is they would dig a pit 10 feet in the ground. Now, if you had lots of rocks and you couldn't go down, you went up. Often done this way. But to get those beams on top to cut them was a chore.
I can imagine.
That was hard work. So what they would rather do is dig the pit and drag the beam over the top of the hole and then cut it.
Makes sense.
Two-man operation. Guy in the bottom, down in the pit with the handle, and all he does all day long is pull up and down on the blade. Nothing but pure muscle.
So if your name was Pittman,
He was the pit man. If his name Pitman the Putman, Pitman the
If you're doing
Pitman the
barbecue,
Pitman.
Larry, if you're doing barbecue,
Whatever. Yeah. Anyway, maybe that's where the name Pitman comes from.
It might be.
Maybe the guy's relatives were Pitman. Anyway, now as bad as that sounds, that's a hard job.
I can imagine.
What's he going to do tonight?
Sleep.
No, not what you're going to do. What's he going to do out tonight? It's going to rain tonight. What's going to be in our pit hole tomorrow morning?
Mud.
Mud and wet sawdust and water.
Ugh.
They didn't have a drain?
No, nope, he's got to stand in it.
Yikes.
Now his feet are wet and cold. You are in northern Michigan, you know that.
Yeah.
We had temperatures down in the 30s 5 weeks ago. It gets cold up here. But if you're from here, they never call it cold. It's a bit chilly.
Yeah.
You know, don't you? It's a bit chilly.
He must have had tall boots.
I'll tell you what, he was cold. It doesn't matter what he wore, he was cold. And then the sun would come out and the water would come out of the pit because it would evaporate. And now he's living in a sauna. And I say he's living in it because he's in there all day long. That's his home. You understand he's not very smart. No, he's not very smart. He's nothing but pure muscle. If he were smart, he wouldn't be working in a hole.
Yeah. No way.
Yep. Now the guy on top is a different story. He is called the tiller man. You know what a tiller is, right? The tiller is the arm on a boat that works the rudder. Keeps the boat going straight. His job up there on top is not to cut board. That's the pitman's job. He grabs the handle and he controls and he cuts a straight line. Okay? That's skilled labor. Yep.
They had that division back then, huh?
Yeah. So I asked the kids, who do you think should make more money? The guy doing all the work on the bottom or the guy on top? We know who's making more money. The kids want the guy on the bottom to make more money. Doesn't work that way. No.
Use this, skill.
Right. Yeah. Now, these guys would work all day long. Cut a board an hour, 12 boards a day, on the average. Make a penny a board. 12 cents.
Wow.
Maybe the guy on top got 15.
What year was that?
I'm going back to 1600, 1700. Yeah. Penny a board. But pennies back then were money.
Yeah.
I mean, you could live on a penny. By today's money, standards today, about $35 a day.
Still ain't much.
Still not much for this kind of hard work. So Campbell said the same thing. This guy is smart.
Yeah, I'm not doing this for
And I'm not doing this. So he built the mill. Instead of 12 boards a day, he did 120.
Wow, that changed everything.
huge productivity increase.
Instead of a penny a board, he got 3 cents a foot.
Wow.
Now people ask me many times, how could he do that? At 3 cents a foot? How could he charge that much? He was the only guy in town.
Monopoly.
This was the first and only sawmill in the state of Michigan.
This guy made a fortune, didn't
He did well.
he? Yeah.
Combine everything together, yep, he was doing very well. His son, when after he died on the farm, 1808. Son sold it to Michael Dowsman from the island. He's the big money man on the island for $1,000. That was a lot of money.
Yeah, that's a lot of
Back
money.
in the 1770s. It was about 1819.
But this guy was pretty smart. I mean, because Campbell, right? You said right, Campbell or Chapman?
Campbell
Campbell.
was
The owner of this thing. He was a pretty smart guy, Doug. I mean, because anyway, we don't need to go in it. You need to go up there, go to the old Mill Creek. Of course, yesterday was, I think, its last day or Sunday or whatever.
Right.
They're closed for the season, but it was built up quite a bit more since when you were there. They've restored a lot of the buildings.
Right.
Gave us a wonderful demonstration how the mechanical saw began to come in and how it worked and how. But this guy Campbell, apparently, he had scoped the land out several years earlier, and he saw a place he could actually create a mill. And apparently this technology I know is very old. It goes a couple thousand years old.
minute, then we go back.
We got to do what's called an adventure tour as well.
Yeah, and guess who was the venturer, of course? I was expecting the fall of man to occur again.
Well, it kind of did, but you know, there was a rock wall you'd climb up, and I've never really done a rock wall. I wanted to try it out. And I got almost to the very top, and I think I could have made it up, but I wanted to kind of fly out.
Even halfway, I was exhausted.
So if you get up and hit the panic button, then what happens?
Bird calls.
Oh,
That's it? So you're already up there, Vivian?
When you're ready to come down, hold on to your rope and push off with your toes.
just a little bit farther and you can make a bird call, Rich.
Just jump.
Jump. Jump.
When you're ready to come down, hang
Just
on
go.
to your rope and lean back.
Lean back.
Yeah. It'll take you right down.
There you go.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yay.
Where'd he go?
So I got about 90% up there. I was only about like one little guy, maybe about 4 feet from the top or so, but I wanted to see what it like. So I said, okay, let's try this out, and I flew back down. And I was tired. I mean, you know, and I said, who am I trying to prove? But I got up there pretty good, I thought.
Yeah, you.
Got up there quite high, and but I wanted to try to see, I wanted to see how it was, and it was kind of like rappelling off a wall, so that was fun. And then we got to do a zip line, which was great. I love doing zip lines. I did one down in the Caribbean islands, down in what island? I'm not sure. We were going for St. Thomas and St. Kitts and a bunch of these. I'm not sure which one it was now. I have to go back and check it out, but.
Hey, Rich.
And Larry's one of our cameramen, and he went with me on that. He got the tour, and so that was a lot of fun, Doug. I mean, just kind of flew out there and go across a long way. It wasn't as high up as the one down in the Caribbean islands, but
I thought Larry was going to end up dipping in the water as he went down the zip
Oh,
line.
you think so? I don't think. Did he get that close?
Yeah, you got the.
I didn't think he got that close.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it wasn't really all that high. It was pretty good, but it was a lot of fun. I love history anyway, Doug. I work for a history museum, and I've always liked history, and this was a really nice place to do it. And in the middle of it was sunny,
Yeah.
color was out.
Yeah.
You couldn't have asked for a better time, Doug. It was really good. You know.
One thing about that's happened with the state parks in the last few years is that they've gone to this recreation passport system. And
Which I
think-
like, actually.
Yes, I think that was one of the smartest things that our government has done in the last.
Which
few
they don't do a
years.
lot of smart things, but that's one thing they did. It was pretty,
Yeah,
really
and
good.
you've got to hand it to
Give
them.
them
Is that
kudos.
they were able to raise a lot more money this way, and some of the things that they have done in the state parks is they've been able to go in and do some of the needed repairs to the different parks that
Right.
you have. And the one thing that we did see on the way up there was the new pathway they did at Aquioc Falls. And
Yes, yeah.
and what was really nice was that you were able to see some of the salmon running.
Yeah, I really didn't get to see him. I wanted to see him pop out of the out of the water. Apparently, there was a woman. You got there earlier than we did. I saw 3 of the fish up there, but they were kind of like looked like they just had gotten up there, but she said there was a fish jumped up just before we got down to that path, and I just missed it. But they were running, and they were two of them were about this long, Doug. They were probably maybe a foot and a half, maybe. But one of them, I swear, was 2 feet long. I mean, it was a big one.
Yeah.
It was really good size.
And one thing that people don't realize about Aqueduct Falls is that if you look down at the rocks that the falls are going over, it's almost entirely Petoskey.
Petoskey stone, yeah, we noticed that. Larry and I looked, oh, this is Petoskey stone. And you called our attention, you said the same thing. And well, first we weren't sure, is that Petoskey stone? But I said, it sure looks like it to me. It's solid.
Yeah.
They're massive
many
ledges.
different layers
Yep.
of Petoskey stone. And, I thought that, the Petoskey stone is only found in a very narrow band up in the northern Michigan, going from Petoskey on over to Alpena area, and I think
there's some, I think, on the Wisconsin side. They're not as much, but there's a little bit over on the Wisconsin side.
it actually makes a full circle.
Does it really?
around the
Okay.
state.
Yeah.
There's some, but I think in some of the states down south, it's a layer that's a little bit buried.
Oh, you think so? So you think there's Petoskey stones lower down? I've never heard that.
Yeah.
I heard it was pretty much a Michigan phenomenon, although there's some in Wisconsin.
Well, Michigan is the place where you find them.
Right,
find them loose as gravel, but you have to actually dig down deeper to find them. And
is that a coral? What is Petoskey?
it's a coral. And for some reason it's unique to this particular area. And although I heard somebody tell me that they find them similar things elsewhere, but this apparently was a special species that was buried in Noah's flood. Now, Michigan is a basin, and it looks like as you go towards the center of the state, the fossils progress to this basin area where it's supposedly youngest going as you go out they're going older according to. Well, of course, in our time frame, we're only talking stages of the flood. And we're talking a burial sequence, not necessarily millions of years. So,
in fact, unnecessarily millions of years. We don't believe millions of years at all, anyway. But that's interesting, the Petoskey phenomenon. So, do you think it might have been at the beginning of the flood, middle, or end? Do you think?
It would be in the middle. That's where in the middle is where you have a lot of the fossil burials taking place. You have sea life, and then the Carboniferous, which would be just above it, would be plant life that covers it over. And so if you, there's, when we went to Joggins, there was the fossil strata that you'd have layers of coal as well as layers that had the fossil trees in it.
Love that, the polystrate fossil where they're going through many layers, Yeah, those are interesting. So, well, that was nice, the Aqueduct Falls. I'm glad you called us on that because Larry and I, we were behind you on the, coming up to the cabin, and we decided to stop in there, and it was a nice. I couldn't believe how nice it looked, Doug. I mean, they have really done some nice improvements on these state park things, the Old Mill Creek, and then of course this Aqueduct Falls thing, and then what was we? Well, we basically went to. Well, the next day we went over to the quarry, but was there anything else we did after that?
Yeah, it was the 40-mile point.
Well, that's what I was trying to think. Yeah, the 40-mile point lighthouse. Talk about that, Doug, a little bit. That was great.
Yeah,
I kind of kept you guys a little bit.
This was a real surprise because I didn't know this was there. They've taken this old lighthouse that was built in 1883 or something like that.
I think so.
And
they've
restored it to look like what it looked like back then. And they have all these antiques in it, and they have, you can actually volunteer to be a lighthouse keeper for a week or a couple weeks. I think the minimum is 2 weeks, but there's some people who actually stay there for the entire summer.
Two things about that is interesting because they've restored totally the pilot house of a ship it was decommissioned in 1961. what was,
It was a calcite.
the calcite, that's right, because that's what they were hauling. It was a smaller boat, but it had a good run because it was built in what, 1912? Yeah, Titanic year. And they showed the progression of boats, how they get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's interesting because as big of a boat it is, normally you call it a ship, but in the Great Lakes it's always called a boat. They're always called boats. I found that out years ago, and they kept getting bigger and bigger. But this one, everything was kind of torn when it was decommissioned, except the pilot house, and it was over in another town. Was it Rogers City? I guess it was in Rogers City.
Yeah.
And it kept deteriorating, and they basically brought over. And all these basically, Doug, this is not a state park. This is all done with private volunteers.
Right.
And they've done some incredible stuff. They've restored that lighthouse. The lighthouse reminds me, Doug, of one that I helped do some artwork for, but it's up in Fort Wilkins, and it's a square lighthouse, where you think of lighthouses, these round kind of siloed kind of structures.
Right.
But a lot of lighthouses, they are as many and varied as you can see. There are a lot of different shapes and sizes. But this it's the brick, and it's more square. You're able to go up in the light tower. And that was great. You got to see. It was neat looking out on the Lake Huron because it was pretty choppy, the water that day. It was really awesome to see that. But
And there was actually a shipwreck.
Yes.
Down on the beach, and you could go down and see the remains of an old ship. It was just the flat hull.
Pretty much,
bunch of
yeah.
Boards and some spikes coming up through it, you know.
Yeah, I walked right by it. I was looking for these parallel things, and I thought that was what we were talking about. And there are some things up there, but no, that's, I think, the property lines or something. But yeah, then I come back and I see all this. What the heck? Oh, there's
The steering house for the calcite used to be over by the quarry, the quarry group. I remember that as a kid.
Really?
And so they, I guess, decided, I think it was in 1996, to bring it over here, and I'm glad they did.
They did because
It
they've
looks like
restored it remarkably well. But the inside of the lighthouse, Doug, I was pretty amazed. The advantage you have, it's a museum, but it's not really one. It's a privately run one because they have, Doug, in the museum I work at, is like, these would be called artifacts, and this is real stuff. Okay? People ask me what's the difference between an artifact and an antique. I said, well, an antique, they've messed with it. An artifact, they let it look crappy. But that's not necessarily totally true, because a lot of artifacts look pretty good. But these they've restored, and but some of them are actually totally original things to start with. But they are what they are. But they had a lot. The period rooms, we always have to put plexiglass, which I hate doing that. But when you have to protect it, you have to. When you got people are donating and loaning stuff out, whatever, you got to make sure that things stay well.
They had an old reed organ in the
you could go walk right in the rooms.
And I got a chance to even play it.
Yeah, you'd never be able to do that at the museum. Museum I'm at. No, that's not going to happen. But
I
that's
had a
what's
good
nice
time
about those things.
talking with one of the fellows at who was the docents at the lighthouse, because he was aware of the Lewiston Historical Society, the museum that they have in Lewiston.
Which is where you went as a kid, right?
As a kid, our family owned this house, which was one of the old lumber barons' houses in Lewiston, and it was the one that's now the museum was owned by David Neeland. It was the name of the fellow who built that place, and his brother Otis Neeland built the one that we had. And David Neeland was the manager of the Neeland Bigelow Company. And there were several different lumber companies in Lewiston at the time.
Yeah.
And the Neeland Bigelow Company were the ones who used those big wheels that you see at Hartwick Pines.
Yeah, we have those. Yeah, Hartwick Pines, and we also have one at the museum downtown too, here in Lansing. Yeah.
And so it was nice to talk with him, because he was talking about how Mrs. Sachs had collected all these antiques from that period, and actually saved even some of the old clothing that people.
She was I don't know to call her a hoarder, but basically they said she saved everything.
Yeah, she did.
And so they have all the clothing from that time period authentic.
And I remember when we toured that museum in Lewiston, I remember seeing an old croquet set that I played with as a kid.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so they saved the croquet set, and so it's kind of fun. I know they had things like old Model T, and but George Sachs, he owned the hardware store in town,
Yep.
and they were sort of like the prominent citizens of Lewiston. But it's just interesting to see the old lumbering history of how. And in the Sears and Roebuck Lodge, which I don't know if I explained it or not, but it was actually ordered out of the Sears and Roebuck catalog.
Right.
When they built it, and so this was around the 1930s. And inside the Sears and Roebuck Lodge, they had some old-time photographs, which reminded me of the photographs that were left by my great-great-uncle.
Yeah, you love that stuff. He's kind of his own amateur history buffy, and your own family is kind of a nice. You got a lot of heritage there. It goes back quite a ways. I remember the time we had that book. What it goes back to Andrew Jackson's day or something like that, or you had some cookbooks.
There's some.
So you've always been fascinated with that, which is interesting because, like I say, your family goes back or you had stuff that goes back to those days. And in Lewiston, that house was. I remember staying up there a couple of times and always had a good time. It was an interesting old house.
Unfortunately, we had to sell that.
Yeah, I remember that.
And then it's no longer there. They had to tear it down, I guess.
But Doug, what I understand, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, and he will. They took that house apart, board by board, and they have it. They could actually rebuild that house. They were talking about actually rebuilding it at some point, as every board has been cataloged and recorded as to when they tore that. They didn't just rip it down. They took it apart with the idea that one day they were going to restore that and rebuild it.
We heard that as a rumor. I don't know if it's true.
Yeah, I don't know it either, but I've heard that for years. And somebody who was just recently, I was hearing about that was actually true. But the only way, Doug, I think we'd have to make a trip to Lewiston and find out if that's true.
Mm-hmm.
We'll have to do that sometime,
Well, I hope you enjoyed our little tour of Michigan. We'll see you next time on Revolution Against Evolution.